I was completely wrong about this movie. When the first trailer dropped for Wonka, I wasn't entirely on board with this movie, as I felt that it was going to be another cash grab but not much effort put into it. I heavily expressed this in my reaction to the trailer months ago, and I said that I wouldn't go see this movie in the theater just because I was stuck on my opinion on this movie. Well, obviously, since I'm making this review, I lied. I saw this on opening day, and I take back everything that I said in my trailer reaction. I was completely surprised by this movie. I didn't really know what I was expecting when I first came into the movie, considering that the only thing I heard prior to watching it was that it was a prequel to the 1971 original film, which I watched religiously as a kid. This movie hadn't even been on my radar after watching that first trailer, because I truly did not know why they were making this. But I can say that I definitely made a great decision by checking it out. Before I get into my review, I just want to say that it is a spoiler review, but this will be one of my shorter reviews. Typically I make like 10-minute movie reviews, but this movie was just so good that I could make a short review just saying everything that was good and bad in a short amount of time. But anyway, let's get into this review. Wonka is basically the origin story of the Willy Wonka character and how he got to be the chocolatier that he was in the 1971 movie. And this is where my only quote-unquote bad thing of the movie comes from. I was unsure whether the movie was a prequel to the 1971 film or its own world with a different version of Willy Wonka. The only reason why I say this is because there was no telling what year the movie takes place in, and the overall setting makes it look like more of a fantasy utopian world than a real place like the 1971 movie. This doesn't knock major points off of the movie or anything, but I came into the movie with the mindset that it was a direct prequel to the original film, but the setting and other factors makes it feel like it was an origin story of Willy Wonka, but just in a different universe. For starters, one of the main plot lines of the movie was that Wonka was basically being held captive as a literal slave at like a hotel lodge type of place because he didn't read the fine print and couldn't pay off the money that he owed. This isn't a bad plot by any means, but with the original movie in mind, this doesn't seem like a realistic thing that would have happened to the Willy Wonka in the 1971 movie. But then again, the original movie did have moments like this that matched the same tone, but that's why I was a bit confused of whether this was a direct origin story of the original Willy Wonka. He does wear the same clothes as him, and they have many references to the original movie that indicate that this is in fact the same Wonka from the original movie, but the overall setting and a lot of the things that happen on Wonka makes you question if this actually happened in prior to the events in the original movie. However, it's not entirely hard to believe that this is a direct origin story of the original Wonka, because like I said earlier, the original movie had the same type of fantastical tone to it, but the only difference was that we saw all of it in the walls of the chocolate factory and not in the real world like the Wonka movie showed us. That's why this confusion that I have doesn't affect the movie for me. It is just the main thing that I could say wasn't entirely explained and was quote unquote bad, even though it really wasn't bad at all. Other than that, this movie was amazing. I walked out of this movie with my friends very surprised. I liked the overall plot of the movie with the chocolate cartel trying to stop Wonka from selling chocolate just because he was too good. Everyone loved him and his chocolate, and I thought it helped tie in well with the original movie and helped explain why everyone was so excited that he was opening his chocolate factory again, because everyone loved his chocolate that much. The whole chocolate cartel thing was funny, but I thought it was cool to see Wonka overcome them and come out on top. Secondly, Timothée Chalamet completely killed it as Willy Wonka and is easily the best part of the movie. His performance of the character was very charming and different from both the Gene Wilder and Johnny Depp performances as a character. You're actually rooting for him as a protagonist because his backstory is actually pretty sad, plus the fact that there are little cartel members trying to stop him from achieving his dream. He is also just likable and passionate about his craft. I also thought that Patterson Joseph, who played Slugworth, was a very good villain. His performance was good because even though he was a villain, I kinda liked him because of how snarky and evil he was over chocolate. The supporting characters like Noodle, the Oompa Loompa, and the Chief of Police also added on nice touches to the overall plot and helped drive the movie. One of my favorite parts of the movie was the references to the 1971 original film. And I don't just love the references because I grew up with Willy Wonka and could point them out. The references were used in creative ways and weren't just overdone just to remind you what this movie is based on. One of my favorite references was the fact that Wonka didn't read the fine print for the hotel, and that might go over some people's heads, but it is a callback to how all the kids and guardians had to sign the contract for the tour back in the original movie, but none of them were actually reading what they were signing, which is what he did in this movie. The Oompa Loompa song was a nice callback, plus a whistle that alerts them, which was used in the original movie, and me and my friends went crazy at the Timothée Chalamet rendition of the Pure Imagination song. Even the factory at the end of the movie looked somewhat similar to the factory in the original. However, my favorite part of the movie was definitely the music. I had no idea going into the movie that it was a musical, but every song was very catchy and well made. The dance sequences and the cinematography used during the songs was top tier. It was actually pretty funny depending on the context of the song. Speaking of funny, the comedy in the movie was very consistent and had many funny moments where I was actually laughing. The running joke with the chief of police getting bigger and bigger because of the chocolate that he got from the cartel members is a typical cliche in a movie like this, but the way they executed it was really funny. Wonka was the most surprising movie of the year for me. I originally was not a fan of this movie coming out because I just felt like it was a cash grab like I said earlier, but they actually put in the effort to make a solid story and an overall solid movie. I feel like there's still potential to be had with Timothée Chalamet as Wonka. After this movie, I genuinely think they could make a sequel where they show us Wonka's success with his factory and they show us why he closed it down, since the premise of the original movie was that he was reopening it. The performances were great, the music was great, the atmosphere was great, everything about this movie was just great, and it was one of my favorite movies of the year. This is definitely a very fun watch for the holidays, and it's definitely on par with the original. So with that being said, I give Wonka a 9 out of 10. And if this movie taught me anything, it is to definitely not judge a book by its cover.